Welcome to the Human Body Systems Project and the computer science component of it, where we're going to use Scratch to create an interactive diagram. What you should know prior to even coding is that you will need two things prior to coding. First of all, since you're doing the interactive diagram, you need to know which parts of your diagram will have rollover effects. Are you going to do 3, 4, 5, whatever it is? The minimum is 3, but you should know what parts of the diagram will have the rollover effects. Secondly, you should have an idea of what you will record when those rollover effects occur. So say, for example, you're going to select the nose from the respiratory system. You should be able to know what you're going to say about the nose when the rollover occurs. So if you have those two things in place, I'm going to walk you through the Scratch component of it. So first, you need to find a diagram to use, and you need to save it to your desktop. I've already found a diagram, so in order to bring it up from my desktop, I will upload a sprite from the file. I have my file selected right here, and it will go ahead and upload my image. Again, I want to upload it as a sprite, and that's very important. I don't want to upload it to the stage, so I want to upload it as a sprite. Secondly, once I have it here, let's go ahead and give this a file name. So I'll call this last name underscore diagram, just to make sure that I've got everything saved. Second, we need to, for the interactive diagram, make many costumes of our diagram with different highlighted sections. Remember, a costume is a different look for a particular sprite. So I've got one sprite here, but one sprite can have many costumes. So how do you do that? Well, first, you click on the Costumes tab, and what you want to do is copy your original diagram using the stamp effect from the top. How many parts of your diagram will have the rollover effect? Because that's how many copies you'll need to make. So say for this case, I'm going to make 3 copies. So I'll just stamp it once to get my second copy, stamp it twice to get my third copy. Let's go ahead and label the diagrams. It would be a good idea to have your first costume be the plain diagram. So I'm going to label this as plain diagram. I'm going to get rid of everything else that's written here. And now secondly, each costume will have a unique name depending on what's highlighted. So maybe this one will be, instead of respiratory system, I'll call this one nose, because that's what's going to be highlighted. And maybe for this third one, it's going to be highlighted or called trachea. Again, just an easy way for me to find it. Still within this costumes tab, I'm going to now start highlighting those sections. So again, this is my plain diagram, this first one, but my second diagram labeled as nose, I'm going to highlight that nose portion. So what you want to do is click this paintbrush icon, and at the bottom of the screen, I've got a couple of options to change a different color. So I'll pick a different color, and I'll make my line a little bit thicker. And then I'll go ahead and highlight this nose area. Okay. And since I have that already saved, I'm going to go ahead and go over here to my third one, and let's change the color on this. And I'm going to highlight my trachea. You could do it whichever way you want. You can see that I'm just kind of giving a general view. Okay. Now that I've got my 3 costumes for my diagram, I need to now add the sounds. So within the Sounds tab, which is up at the top to the right of Costumes, I'm going to go ahead and click on the microphone icon to create new sounds. So when the dialog box opens up, once I click on New Sound, I'm going to click on this circle here to actually record. And so when this dialog box opens up, just go ahead and click Allow. And I'm going to just start recording, and I can tell it's recording because of this bar bouncing up and down. If you have an issue, just make sure that you've clicked allow. If you have another issue, ask me in class. But either way, let me stop this one and delete that, and I'm going to try to create a new one. This will be the example for the nose. Once I'm done, I click stop and I change my file, and I'm going to change it to whatever um, part of the body that I discussed. Let me add my second one, and I'm going to make my recording. This recording is about the trachea, and I'm going to stop that and change that file now to trachea. Now that we have not only our costumes, but also our sounds, now I can actually start recording. It's always a good thing to do a file save now to make sure that all of the changes are in place. Now we can start to write our code. And what I will do to write our code is go to the scripts tab. And typically, if you recall, our code begins with when flag clicked from the events drawer. Usually we start everything with when flag clicked from the events drawer, but since this is going to be part of a menu, I will start with this when I receive block. This is just going to make my life easier when I join all the parts together. And so when I receive what, I'm just going to call this diagram, since this is the interactive portion, as the event title. So when I receive diagram, first what I want to do is make sure that everything is centered. So I'm going to go to the motion drawer, and I'm going to select the block that says go to X, Y. I'm going to drag that over and make sure our sprite is centered at 0, 0. Okay, and so now when this is, when I click on it, it actually centers it. And you'll notice that right now I've got the costume with the trachea. So the second piece of code that I want to add is to make sure that the right costume is in place. I'm going to go to the looks drawer, and I'm going to drag the block of code that says switch costume to. And which one was it? Well, I said earlier that I want to start with the plain diagram. So right now I've got my sprite centered, and I've got my plain diagram. It's clicked. Now we can actually control our code. The way that we're going to control our code is going to take a forever block from the control drawer. So if I go to the control drawer and I drag over this forever block, basically this will make sure that the code runs the whole time a user is on the screen. Next, I'm going to grab an if else block from that and put that within my forever loop. And if else is an example of a conditional. Conditional code tells the computer to do one thing if this happens, else do something else. Okay? So what I'm about to do now will go in the if slot within this if else statement. If the mouse touches a certain part of the screen, I want that highlighted portion to show up, and I want my sound effect to go into place. So when I highlight somewhere over here by the nose, I want to make sure that that plays, or somewhere over here by the trachea, I want to make sure that that plays as well. So what you need to do is do this first. You'll go ahead and go to the operators drawer, and you'll grab 3 AND blocks. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so right now I have AND block 1, AND block 2, AND block 3, and you'll notice that each AND block has 2 slots. We'll call them slot 1 on the left and slot 1 on the right. So again, slot 1, slot 2, slot 1, slot 2. Now what I want you to do is put the AND block, the second AND block, in slot 2 of the first AND block. So again, what I did was I took the second AND block and I put it in slot 2 of the first one. And now I've just made it longer. And now what I'm going to do is take the third AND block and put it in slot 2 of what was the second AND block. And it should look like this. You've got three and statements. Oops. You've got three and statements and then four little slots there. What you want to do next is go to the operators right here, and let's grab two greater than operators. So I'm going to drag two greater than operators, again within the operators drawer, and I'm going to put them in the first and third slot of this large AND block. So I'm going to put it in the first and third slot of the large AND block, so it looks like that. Now I'm going to grab two less than operators, and I'm going to put those in the second and fourth slot of this large AND block. So second and fourth slot of the large AND block. So now what I have is a conditional statement that's ready to say if something's greater than something and something's less than something and it's greater than something else and less than something else, well then do something about it. So let's go ahead and put that, this whole thing is going to drag over into this slot right here. Now what I want to do is I want to go to my sensing drawer and grab two mouse X blocks and two mouse Y blocks. The first mouse X block is going to go in the first slot of my greater than operator, and the second mouse X block is going to go in the third slot of my less than operator. So my greater than operator has a mouse X, and my less than operator has a mouse X. I'm going to do the same for my mouse Y. The greater than operator has a mouse Y, and the less than operator has a mouse Y. Now what I need to do is I need to figure out what numbers will go in here. Because what I'm basically saying is as long as the X value of the mouse is greater than something and less than something, and the Y value is, as you know, is up or down, it's greater than something or less than something, then I want my code to go in effect. So what's my X? It's my left and right. So I want to go maybe right here, which right down at the bottom tells me where my X is at. So right here is about, looks like negative 70. So as long as I'm greater than negative 70, and I'll go maybe this far, and I'm less than negative 47, and then the same thing for the Y. How high do I want, what's my lowest point? Okay, as long as I'm higher than, it looks like Y right now is, again, right here. It looks like maybe at about 108. As long as I'm greater than 108, but I'm less than 132, my conditional is done. That's probably the hardest part of the code because everything else after that is easy. Because now what I'm going to say is, if this is true, then I'm going to go to the looks drawer and I'm going to switch the costume and switch it to the appropriate costume. Well, that section was talking about my nose. And right after that switch costume block, I want to play the sound. I want to not take play sound trachea because that's going to play it over and over, but I'm going to take the second block that says play sound until done. So I'm going to play the sound nose until done. After the else statement, I just want to make sure that I'm showing the right costume. So I'll go back to my looks, and I'm going to say switch costume back to the plane diagram. So now, as long as I go over here, this will be the example for the nose. Awesome. This will be the example for the nose. And now once I go off of it, my highlight is gone. And now all you need to do is just add this same code as many times as needed for as many parts as you have. So again, if I'm going to do this real quick, then I'm going to drag this for now my trachea. And I'm going to just figure it out for my trachea. where things need to go, but this time I'm going to just fly through it because you've already seen it once. But essentially, I'm just doing this again for the trachea, grabbing some greater thans, grabbing some less thans, and I'm just making sure that everything is in place in that sense so that I can have my code working for the trachea. I'll do a little bit of it just so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. And now, since I'm working on my trachea, let's see, x should be greater than -10 and less than 12, and it should be greater than 16, but it should be less than 65. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that I switch my costume to the trachea, and I want to also play my sound trachea until done. Oops, did you notice something? Yep, I didn't grab my if else. So I'm going to just go ahead and swap that, put that in there, put that in there, and now my else statement can say switch costume back to the plane diagram. And let's see if this works. Going to make my recording. This recording is about the trachea, and I'm great. This will be the example for the nose. Perfect. So now I have my functioning diagram and I can work from there.